What if overwhelm has nothing to do with how much work you have? What if the real problem is not your workload, but the story you're telling yourself about it? Think about it. Some people carry enormous responsibility and remain calm. Others face far less pressure and still feel exhausted, anxious, and stuck. So, what actually creates overwhelm? That question takes us directly to the opening of the Bhagavad Gita. And perhaps that is why Arjuna's story still feels so relevant today. Because many modern leaders, entrepreneurs, parents, and professionals are fighting a similar battle. A battle between clarity and confusion, confidence and self-doubt, control and surrender. Today's guest understands that battle deeply. Corrie LoGiudice is a keynote speaker, high-performance coach, and author of The 5 Overwhelm Culprits. After spending more than 15 years leading teams in business and navigating profound personal challenges that forced her to rethink success, identity, resilience, and leadership itself, Corrie developed a practical framework that helps people move from overwhelm to clarity, confidence, and purposeful action. In this conversation, Ankur and Corrie explore some fascinating questions. This is a conversation about leadership, about identity, about reinvention, and about discovering that the battlefield is rarely outside us. It's almost always within. Welcome to Beyond the Battlefield.
So Corrie, welcome to Beyond the Battlefield. One of the things which keep on fascinating me about Bhagavad Gita is that it begins with someone who should not have been confused and he should have been at the peak of his confidence. And in Bhagavad Gita, Arjun was highly skilled. He was respected. He was tested across multiple battles and he has not lost a single war. And yet, at the moment when he has to fight, he froze. Not because he was lacked capabilities, because he become overwhelmed. And when I look around your work, around overwhelm, identity shift, burnout, reinvention, I see very modern versions of the same battlefield around you as well. So I would love to explore a lot of things with you today. And one thing which keep on coming in my mind personally, every time I read this book, I discuss people like you, that Arjun's crisis was not a competence problem. It was an overwhelm problem. So, Corrie, one thing I see in leadership today is that many people assume overwhelm happens because they are not capable enough, right? But Arjun was incredibly capable. So, in your experience, what actually causes high performer to become overwhelmed when they are fully capable of handling the challenge in front of them?
I love this question. And you're right, too, because oftentimes when people talk about overwhelm, you assume it's some kind of a shortcoming in terms of one's, productivity, kind of, right? We tie it to things like time management and, productivity and all that. But really, when you're overwhelmed, it's simply a sign that your strategy is not in alignment with your current reality. So more times than not, when you think about it, whatever it was that you were doing before that worked fine. Day in and day out, you're doing the same thing. You're not having an issue. When something changes and disrupts that, that's when you start to feel overwhelmed. And when you're able to identify specifically what that trigger is and how it affects you, that's what helps you be able to continue to take action regardless of those feelings and to be able to move forward, like you had said.
You're right. So in Bhagavad Gita as well, if you deep dive, when first time Arjun came and said that, I don't want to fight. So Krishna did not immediately resolve that problem.
Right.
Like you rightly said that you need to identify what are the root causes around that. So first he helps him to understand what has created those overwhelms, those fear, those anxiety, the understanding that I will not fight. So your work is also, you talk a lot of thing about identifying the root cause. You just said.
Sure, the overwhelm culprit.
Overwhelm, right? What is the culprit around that? And rather than just managing symptoms, right? So what are those some of the most common overwhelm culprits you see in leaders today? And how often do they mistake symptoms for the real problem?
Sure. So there's 5 root causes of overwhelm. They all begin with the letter C and they're very easy to remember. So the first one is lack of clarity. right? And this sounds a lot like what you were describing before, that he's on the battlefield and he's like, I don't know what I should do. I just know I don't want to fight. He's lacking clarity on what to do in this situation, because it's not just so much knowing what it is you want. You have to know why, right? You want to do or have it or whatever. So making sure that you're identifying what that is huge to help you get unstuck. And the second one is lack of confidence. So it's not just so much knowing what you want and why you want it. If you don't believe that you could do or have it, you're going to stay stuck and overwhelmed. So a lot of times this manifests as things like imposter syndrome or not showing up to your fullest potential because you don't believe you're in the right rooms, that kind of thing, which is very much a self-limiting issue. The third one is lack of community. So the famous motivational speaker Jim Rohn once said that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with. So if the people that you are choosing to spend time with, because let's be real, we curate the people we spend time with, if they don't know how to do what it is you want to do, don't believe it's possible, or worse yet, they're going to hold you back because it doesn't benefit them in some way, shape, or form, you're going to stay stuck and overwhelmed. The fourth one is lack of conditioning. And when I say conditioning, I'm talking about your physical and mental health and wellness. So how are you exercising your mind and your body? Because if we don't do this, especially as leaders, we become the bottleneck in every single system that we're running, right? Because we're not functioning at our highest physical and mental capacity. And this is usually like the very first thing. A lot of my work is done with women in leadership, especially working mothers. And this is the first thing that goes out the window because we're so busy prioritizing everybody else instead of ourselves. And that's something that you have to address, because otherwise you're going to prevent everybody around you from getting ahead, including yourself, if you don't put on your oxygen mask, as they say on the airplane, first before helping others. And then last but not least, the fifth culprit is lack of consistency. So in order to receive results different than you're getting today, it requires you taking action over and above what you're doing today to be able to get it. But in today's day and age, especially with us being so hyper connected, you got Slack, you got email, you got this, you got that. It's much, much harder to be able to function because we have so much stuff in our brain in terms of what to do. So the mental load is astronomical at this point. So the more that you could take out of your brain and put into systems, habits, routines, processes, SOPs, right? The more consistent you could be, that you could go over and above what you're currently doing. But the important part is we have to make sure that we're designing our systems to help accommodate us on our worst days and not on our best days. Because so many people in systems design, they design for like the ideal solution, where really we want to design for like the worst case scenario, because then no matter what, on your very best days, you're going to be even higher. And those are all 5.
So all 5 culprit you said, and out of those 5, 3 reminds me very important thing which I have learned. One thing you said that put your oxygen mask first before helping others, right? And that's what the whole theme of Beyond the Battlefield. We say that the battlefield is always inside, not outside.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If you want to really help others, please help yourself first.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Other thing you said that your mind is trained around something, right? And how do you change those habits? We discussed a lot around that, and I really practically applied on myself. The way I used to think and the way I used to think now is different from what is in for me to what I can contribute. That change is, it looks very simple in speaking, but when you transform them from one state to other state, it is very difficult. But that is very important. And third thing which stuck is I would say that you are the personality, or your identity is the 5 people around you. That's what you say, right? Now that's what shape you, because you look your friends, family, kids, your wife, your parents, and you start shaping yourself, right? Now, one thing which you also talk about is about identity shifts. Now, in Gita as well, Arjun was deepest struggle was also identity. He is a warrior, and now he starts speaking like a wise person on the battlefield. Now, a teacher can't fight a war, and that's where Krishna wanted Arjun to transform and come back to his real role. And Gita, it gives clear indication that how you should be aligned with what your inner self is. And I think you also works around that, right? So Arjun was not sure whether he's warrior, teacher, family member, his disciple, right? So many people today as well go through major identity shift, like promotion, burnout, parenthood, career changes, losses, right? So why do identity transition often feel harder than actual external change itself?
Sure. Well, it's because the identity change is forcing you to leave behind the person you were to step into who you're meant to become. So I am a huge believer that everything that you have experienced in life has prepared you for how you are meant to help and serve others next. And the problem with identity and the way that most people view it is they look at it as a title, where a title is just a very small part of that. It's a title is the culmination of all of the experiences and the relationships and the, things that you've learned, the individual lessons that you've learned while under that title. It is, you are not the title, you are the collection of all those things. So sometimes, and I experienced this very, very recently after my book came out, because my book, a big part of it was more or less discussing how I navigated all these different challenges. And I realized while writing it, the person writing the book was different and independent from the person that was in the book that it was originally written for. And I had to grieve that person because I was, but in order to do that, I had to grieve, I had to let go to be able to fully step in to the version of me now that is able to help and serve and teach other people as a result of what the other woman, me, past me, had gone through, and take all those lessons and all those experiences and turn them into something tangible to be able to help people. And that's the hard part. But the good news is when you are brave enough to step into that, it is the most rewarding thing you could possibly experience in life. And that's what motivates me, especially to continue. Like I'm constantly trying to learn. I'm constantly trying to change. I'm constantly trying to test myself, because that is how I could be of better service to others and have a greater impact.
Right. And when you said that we need to keep changing yourself, and you said that you keep on learning new things. Now you talked about mind, and in Gita, mind is not brain actually. The mind is something which is not visible scientifically.
Mhm.
But it is something which is not programmed for us. What we say is it is programmed for other than human. All animated people, like animals, will have a mind, but it is programmed. You can't change that programming, but human has an ability to change that
Sure.
in the programming.
Mhm.
And that's where, like you said, that we keep on learning. The reason we keep on learning, because mind help us to interact with the world and change ourselves as the world changes. While animal can't do that, and that's where you're seeing dinosaur and many, many different big animals, they don't exist now
Mhm.
because they could not change based on the world and the atmosphere and the weather keep on changing. We can
Mhm.
change ourselves as a human, right? And that's where mind plays an important role. And you said that mind creates a lot of our own personality. We also said that a lot of physical health problems, 70-75% problems, are because of mind somewhere, not today, maybe 15, 20, hundreds of back. In your mind, something which you are carrying, which has created that health problem today.
Mhm. Yes, no, that's so
Right.
true. And I was reading a statistic recently. I'm not able to recall the exact one, but it was mind blowing how many decisions daily are done through pre-existing programming. And that's why it's so difficult, especially when it comes to things like talking about the consistency culprit, right? Folks who want so badly to be able to do something consistently. They want to work out, or they want to like practice guitar, or whatever that looks like for them, but they just can't bring themselves to do it. A lot of times too, it's they've got to go through and they've got to rewire that programming that they had telling them why it was bad. A lot of times it's self-sabotage in certain ways, that there's some kind of a fear that pops up around them showing up to do it. So I 1,000% agree. The programming side of it, especially with the mind, once you learn that it's, moldable and it's flexible and you could turn it into whatever it is you want to, that's a huge unlock from a performance standpoint, like big time, once you learn how to do that effectively.
Yeah, and the flip side of that programming is I've seen a lot of leader, a lot of people, if they've succeeded with one type of activities or training or one type of method, now they want to apply that method everywhere. And that's where they forget that your mind is programmable and you can
Yes.
reprogram for the new thing.
Yep. No, instead they follow old patterns instead of looking at data in front of them in terms of what's actually performing. It's so easy to
Right.
get stuck because it was easy and it was really easy and it worked really well for me before. So we should just continue doing the same thing that we did 10 years ago. But the world doesn't work that way. What's the data actually showing you? Again, coming back
Yeah.
to clarity. Clarity will always kind of to set you on the right path.
And very simple way it has been explained. How do you change that. So like I know how to walk on left side, right? Now I just need to walk on right side.
Right.
So mind is trained for years, maybe multiple births. In Bhagavad Gita says that, whatever habits you are carrying may not be of this lifetime, maybe older habits you are carrying. You have to just train your mind from that habit to the new habit, right? But
Yes.
right, and that's where the first human understanding of meditation comes in chapter 6, that how do you meditate and how do you train your mind from one direction to other direction.
Sure. No, and you just actually brought up a great hack too. I believe James Clear talks about in his book Atomic Habits, where sometimes anchoring in the old habit to a new habit is helpful. So tying it into a pre-existing routine so that it does become automatic, you're just doing something different in place of it, can be incredibly helpful.
So moving forward, one more thing which really excited, and I was going through a lot of your articles, blog on your website and all of those places, is I've seen leaders today, they want everything to hold together. They feel that if they don't hold together, everything will collapse. And that is where I have seen a concern in families, in organizations. Many times it is true that you need to hold together, you need to keep everything in control. But if you don't give freedom to the team, to the family members, how will they grow? So how one can recognize that those kind of signals before they reach to the breaking point?
I love that question because it's an important conversation on having vulnerability in leadership. So many leaders are afraid of being vulnerable, but when you're afraid of being vulnerable, there's actually two different things that it actually impacts. First and foremost is it prevents the people around you, whether that be your team, or I'm a big proponent of self-leadership. You're a leader everywhere you are. So whether that be your team, your family, your community, whatever that looks like, by you not embracing your vulnerability, you're not modeling for everybody else that it is safe to be vulnerable around you. So people are not going to be honest. People are going to withhold things from you, information that you're going to need to be able to effectively lead them. They're not going to do because you don't feel safe with them. See how much of it's how much hypocrisy is involved with that. You have to be able to have them mirror it to you. So that's number one. And number two, when it comes to vulnerability in terms of capacity and that you're carrying too much, you're not leading effectively because you're not leveraging everybody around you. You kind of pointed to this before, that you're preventing people from having opportunities to learn and grow, maybe by delegating or maybe by asking for help, but also you're preventing yourself from being able to achieve more at a higher capacity because you're putting all that expectation on you. And it's not up to you to decide whether or not you should be the one to handle everything, right? You're supposed to be able to allow other people to step in, to be able to help and to be able to contribute. By being the one doing everything, in a way, it's kind of selfish, but it also kind of burns you out at the same time. So it doesn't help anybody, in the long run.
Yeah. And that is where I've seen a lot of organizations fail, because they fail to identify that someone who is pretending that he's controlling everything, he's actually, erasing the key talent within the organization. Because then you will have only people who will follow. You will not build new leaders.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, no, and it's different because and then too, are you really being a leader? Because the definition of a leader is somebody who's able to, more or less inspire, motivate, and develop other leaders, right? That's the whole purpose of it. And if you're so firmly controlling everything, basically you're just having a team of people that could deliver based on SOPs and checklists and stuff. It's like, that's not the definition of a leader. That's a manager.
Yeah, that's a manager.
So why, it's not even part of the same conversation.
Now, the Bhagavad Gita would not have been possible if a turning point has came into the Arjuna's life on the battlefield. So he prepared for this war for 13 years. He came as a warrior, but all of a sudden he started become a wise person and started giving sermons to people around that in the battlefield. Now that was a turning point, but the turning point was actually programmed or planned to bring in, because Krishna knew that because the fight was within the families, and Krishna knew that if you are fighting to families, you are going to get emotionally attached to those people, and if the war has begun, and within the war, if that emotion comes up, definitely one of the best warrior will fail. So he purposefully brought in that turning point with a kind of word he used, and then all of a sudden Arjuna decide that I will not fight. Now, without that crisis on the battlefield, you and me would not have been discussing together this point, and there would not be there won't be a Bhagavad Gita. So your story also involves significant personal challenges and reinvention. So when you look back, do you think the crisis is sometimes less about breaking us and more about introducing us to a version of ourselves which we have never met?
I have a lot of thoughts about this. I talk a lot. I call them pivotal life moments. So there are moments in your life where after the event, it's never the same as before. So the best example for most folks would be the pandemic. Everybody went through it. Life has not been the same. So you can view these kind of events in multiple different ways. I myself, as you mentioned, have experienced significant personal trauma in a very short time frame. I chose from the very beginning to view them as lessons, even while I was in it. So very much I never viewed it from a victim standpoint, even though I literally was a victim. I was an abuse victim. There was a lot of stuff that happened, but I viewed it as, why does this keep happening to me? Like, what am I supposed to learn so that this doesn't happen anymore? And through going through that, each and every one of those scenarios taught me something different, whether that be about the people surrounding me, whether that be about the programming that we were talking about before, my own internal programming, whether that be about my support network, whether it be about different skills or different tools and things that I needed. There was always a lesson in every single one of them. And until I determined what that lesson was and did something to change myself as a result, I experienced the same thing over and over and over and over again. So one really solid example, for many, many years, in my romantic partnerships, whether it be my ex-husband and whoever, I was attracted to addicts. It was just addiction. It had to do with me feeling like I could fix somebody, or I wanted to be able to help them and everything else. Until I was able to identify that was the core pattern that kept showing up, I never would have met my now husband. And that was a result of me literally clicking, I do not drink or do alcohol, on an online dating profile to meet him. Right? I had to make the change, and I had to decide internally to be able to have a different result. And that's what these pivotal life moments have the opportunity to teach you if you approach it from that standpoint.
A similar way, we also, and I learned that I used to believe that, magic happens. When you're a kid, you really believe that there has to be magic, right? Then when I grew, I realized that there is no magic, it's just trick, right? Then after some time, I thought that when magic happens, God does the magic, because I feel that someone should come and help me now. But finally I realized that magic really happens, and God does the magic, but God does the magic through us. If God has to taste chocolate, they have to take a human avatar, right. So when you say, when you go to personal crisis, a turning point, a lot of things, you talked about victimization and many more things which go through us as well. I had been a similar kind of situation multiple times, not the way you explain, or you had been very smaller one, but still what I believe that, and what I've learned is that the way you respond to the situation, that you are, and that's what you form, right? If you and me are talking today, or maybe I'm appearing in an interview today, if I don't reply right question, I'll not get that job, right? Similar way in life as well, a question comes up, pandemic came in. Now the people have responded in a way which can help others and help themselves. They've changed. But someone who has gone against them, that collapsed. Correct? I think you're taken and responded the way your inner self has said at that time. And we always say that what is right now, nothing which beyond that, right? And that's how things have changed for you.
Right. No, I say all the time that if you want to lead an extraordinary life, it requires extraordinary action. And when you were just sharing that before, it reminded me of a passage from my book. It's actually the way I close the book, and I share very vulnerably a page from my journal that was immediately after I lost my partner to suicide. And it was me basically more or less like pleading, number one, there's so much despair in it. There's so much, there's no clarity. Like, I don't know what's next for me. And in the passage, I literally wrote, I was like, I don't know what miracle I need, but I hope the miracle finds me soon, or something along those lines. I paraphrase it. And when I was finishing the last chapter and I was just cleaning out my room, and I found the journal and I found it. It really made me stop and think, because it was at that moment that I realized that I was the miracle. I saved myself, right? I decided that I was going to make a change, that I was going to do something different, that I was going to look at a situation in a different way. So here I was 10 years ago before writing this book, going through all of this and praying for a miracle without realizing that the miracle is inside me all along. And it's up to you to be able to unleash that. And the way that we do that is through all the things that we're talking about today.
And every time when I had a fight with my partner, with my daughter, or someone very close to me, right? Before some time, I used to pinpointing what's wrong with you. Today also I observe that, but now I see that what's wrong in me. If I'm talking to my daughter, I need to understand what she's going through in her age and what I am going through. So only that awareness brings a change in yourself rather than, pinpointing what others are doing wrong and what has to be right. I think we should look at what we are doing right. And that's where battlefield is always inside. It's not outside.
Oh my God, I agree with that so much. What you just mentioned too, in terms of when you feel triggered or when you feel like highly emotional about something, that's often your intuition trying to teach you something about yourself. So if there's something that like your kid is doing, for example, that it's really kind of irritating you, getting to the root of why is that so irritating to me? It could be any number of things from your past or your programming. It could have absolutely nothing to do with your kid. When you unpack it that way. But so many people are so content with just sleepwalking through life and just being reactive to everything instead of really taking advantage of all of these, rich life experiences that have the ability to teach us not just about ourselves, but about others, and to be able to take that and help others with it moving forward, whether that be helping by better supporting them, like supporting our kids when we get triggered, or by helping ourselves or our teams. The way we learn that is through life experience, but we have to take a beat and analyze that experience to be able to extract it out of it.
And those experiences are like we discussed a couple of minutes back that those experiences are not going to help you every time in future.
Right.
And many time we overthink that because the kid is not eating today, definitely he or she must have ate something outside. We never think that because they have done in past. So you follow that kind of pattern, but you never thought that he might be not feeling well. We should check with the doctor or check his or her health or what they are going through. Now, another thing which keep on coming into my understanding, and you just talked about awareness, self-awareness, and we in Gita it has gone one step further, and it has talked about self-awareness to self-realization. When it says self-awareness, I know I am Ankur, but self-realization is this is my role as Ankur. Right now, the difference is that when I am self-realized, I am getting angry with someone. I will, my inner self will say that Ankur is now going to get angry, not I am going to get angry. So I become a witness of the role of the movie, of the drama, what we are going through, and we are just an actor. Now that awareness to realization comes by taking pause. Right now, one of the example which we have seen in Bhagavad Gita is Arjun has asked only two things: either he wants to run away, or he was forcing Krishna to give an answer that if I will fight, I'll win, or you validate that I move ahead, I run away from this, right? And Krishna has done none of them. He did not do anything what he has asked for, but he created a space, he created a pause. Now my question is that many leaders are conditioned to push through everything. Work harder, move faster, stay strong. We keep on telling people around that, but we even don't realize what we are saying sometimes. So, how do you help someone recognize when pushing forward is actually making things worse?
Sure. So the easiest way to tell whether or not you're pushing forward and you're at risk at burnout is how you feel energetically when you're pushing forward. So if you're working long hours and you're pushing forward, and like even as an example for me, the last month was nuts because I launched a book and it was just crazy between like kids in school and lots of concerts, and there's just so much going on. Even with as stressful as that was, it was a positive stress for me because I was working towards something that brought me joy, that brought me fulfillment, that felt aligned. When you're moving in that manner, and you're at max capacity and you're pushing, and you're feeling energetically drained from it, you're feeling detached, you're not wanting to interact with other people, you want to kind of withdraw into yourself. I know for me, my big sign if I'm about to burn out is I'll start scrolling online. I try to disassociate with whoever I'm around currently, and I start trying to find connection through the internet, which is ridiculous. But that's kind of my sign that I'm starting to disconnect. When you start feeling like that, that's when you're pushing it too hard, or maybe you're in a role that isn't aligned for you. Maybe you don't align with the values in your organization or your company. There's a disconnect there. So again, to kind of like recap it, I would look at, is this amount of motion, is it energizing you? That like, yeah, you might be tired, but like you're emotionally energized and excited for what's next? Or are you physically and mentally drained and disconnected? It could go either way.
Yeah. So the last point what you said is also, explained by in a very practical way at that time, and with a metaphor or one. Now we follow as a ritual, so we call it yajna. Yajna is like fire ritual which we do every year in a home, but at a specific occasion also sometimes we do. Now there are 12 different yajna explained over there, and one of the yajna you explained just a moment back. Now that is about that you are energetic inside, but your body is tired, right? So what is talk about is that your energy, when it is too much energized and you do not divert in a right way, or you do not take those pauses, or the breaks, like you explained, it's going to, you will be breaking down at some point of time in a day. So that's where this yajna help, that how do you pause yourself from the inner energy to outer energy. And there are energies, right? Energy inside, energy outside. How do you take? And that's where the breathing techniques, the pranayam, the meditation comes up.
Oh yeah. Yeah, no, and I'm a huge proponent of meditation. I do it a lot in my own practice. If I don't have it, then I don't have that time and space and that break that I need to be able to decompress and like process everything that's happened. Another thing I wanted to mention too, which I think is important when it comes to energetics in particular, when you're running at that level, you mentioned the 4 a.m. to like 2 a.m. the next day, just because you're motivated and you're going. That the way to counteract that is to start viewing yourself as having seasons in life, similar to the way that Earth has seasons, right? We have a spring, we have a summer, we have a fall, we have a winter. Each one of those seasons has a specific purpose, right? The winter is to rest and restore, to drive energy to the roots so that we could, be re-energized in the spring and grow all the way through harvest in the fall. So when you're in those kind of seasons, for example, with my book launch and everything, I'm coming out of a summer season, maybe almost a fall season, because finally it was like the fruits of my labor were finally being harvested. So from now, it's very natural for me to downshift into more of a winter season where it's more about, rest and restoration. Because rest and restoration are very different, and being able to kind of reset myself to be able to ramp up my energy again for what's next. You can't go all the time at 150 miles an hour. You can go for short stints, right? As long as it's intentional and it's planned that way.
So this reminded me, and I'll put that link into the description. So I have created a few more episodes under a series called India Unwritten. And the third episode is around Beyond Rhythms. So Beyond Rhythm is about, you said that from fall to summer to winter and monsoon. Monsoon, we have monsoon as well. So if you see that India doesn't have one big festival. We have multiple festivals throughout the year. The first festival starts from harvesting up to the Diwali. And there are multiple festivals, and that's where we take multiple pauses. And that's how we don't feel tired when we celebrate, because it is so rhythmically designed that every time the festival comes, there is a purpose. For an example, in summer, there won't be any festival because you are drained. It's too hot in India. You can't have any festival over there. Then immediately monsoon comes. Then also you can't celebrate. So that's where a lot of fasting festivals, all of those things start coming. After monsoon, immediately there will be a festival for dance, there will be a festival for food, there will be a festival for Diwali and everything. Because now you can celebrate, now you can explore. I think I'll also look into what you have done over there, but I'll put the link in the description, which talks about, multiple years before our ancestors created that rhythm. Another thing which reminded me from the season you said, even our time of a day is also designed like that. And in Bhagavad Gita, it has been explained that there are three material nature we have, everyone will have: goodness, laziness, or I'll say dumbness, and passion. So, or ignorance, not dumbness, but ignorance and passion. Now, from morning 4 to 8, it is goodness, right? And that's the time we do exercise, we do meditation, we do prayer and everything. From 8 a.m. onwards, it's the time for passion. And that's where full day we work with a lot of energy. But at 7, we want to go for a party. And that's where ignorance comes in. You will now never get up 6 a.m. in the morning and say, I want to have a glass of wine. You won't have. No one will have, right? I know that in Las Vegas, after 4 a.m., casinos are very light. People say that we do cleaning, but actually it's a mental this thing that at 4 a.m. you will not go for casino, right? You like to do something else, but you not do those things. So that's how our time of the day is also designed.
That's interesting. I've never heard it broken out that way. But from a biology standpoint, this is interesting, kind of adds on to what you're talking about. So when you look at like the standard, say 9 to 5, like corporate, work schedule, that's designed very much on male biology, which is also similar to what you had described. A 24-hour clock is very much a male-centered clock in terms of hormones. Your hormones rise and fall in the same pattern over 24 hours. Women, it's very different. So then that's why some women really find it difficult with this like constant hustle mentality, because in a male-centered clock, you're getting that renewal all within 24 hours. For women, it doesn't happen that way biologically. It's on a 28-day cycle. So it's over the course of a month where we'll have a week where we're like, yeah, networking, this, that, whatever. And then we have a week during our cycle where we're like, oh no, the energy is being drained out of me literally, through this, process, and I have no energy to give anybody else. So also keeping that in mind for when you're planning, not to take it into, scheduling and productivity, but I think it's so important to look at your own peaks and valleys and how you function on a daily basis or even on a monthly basis, and taking that into account with what you're trying to accomplish over the course of the month can make a really big difference and help you perform at a much higher level with less effort involved.
Yeah, and this also remind me one thing, that when we were kid, we had always been asked at 7:30 or 7 p.m. you should go for a prayer somewhere around in house, in the neighbor's house, or in a temple nearby. You should go. I never understood. You are into schools, you are kid, you want to play, but you had been asked to go there. But now I realize that why that ritual has been made, because at 7 your mind started become ignoring and started getting into something which is more lazy, more kind of diverting into a different direction. So that's where that practice was made, that you go to temple for 30 minutes, 15 minutes, your mind will again come back, and then again you will be starting your evening time with a good note. So let's move forward. One thing which I have and you talked about today, and that's what reminded me about the confidence. Now in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna has never tried to give Arjuna confidence. He always helped him to rediscover, and that's where this Gita was written for 700 verse, 18 chapter, because Arjun was keep on asking a question which, like I said earlier, he wants to run away, or he wants someone to tell him you run away, right? So, but here Krishna has helped him to discover the confidence. Now the question comes up is that when life knocks the clarity out from under someone, and you also describe somewhere into your coaching work as well, what's the process of rebuilding that confidence, and how is real confidence different from simply appearing I'm confident?
Sure. Well, first thing is realizing that confidence is an inside job. No one else can make you confident but yourself. That is the very first mindset shift, because so many of the people, especially the folks that I work with in my coaching, they're looking for external validation from other people that they should be able to show up as confident. So they're either like going and getting multiple certifications that aren't necessarily needed. They're stacking degrees. They have so many numbers and letters after their name to try to get themselves to feel like they belong in the room, where truth is that has nothing to do with it, because you put a Band-Aid on the situation that you're not confident in yourself. You shouldn't need to get that sort of external validation from other people. So once you shift your mindset on that and then actually ask yourself the question, it's really that simple. What am I not confident about? And think about it from the standpoint of, what am I genuinely not confident about, not what other people have told me I'm bad at, or what other people say that I should be able to build. From there, if you're honest with yourself and answer that question, it's then fairly straightforward to say, okay, well, what do I need to do, learn, or acquire to bridge that gap? And from there, it's up to you as the individual to go out and either seek mentorship or take a course or read a book or do something until you have, number one, the know-how of what it is that you're looking to accomplish and to gain that confidence with. But then the second part of it comes from actually doing the thing. And doing the thing is often the scariest part that most people don't want to do. I mean, I work as a professional speaker. Several of my coaching clients have been other speakers who are just terrified at pitching themselves. They're absolutely terrified of sending out emails to people and saying, hey, I can help and serve you. Here's how. And once you go through and you actually do the first few of them, and you get that first no, and you realize you're still okay, and you keep going, and then you finally get that yes, eventually with time, whatever it is that you felt scared to death of doing that you didn't feel confident about, you naturally have more confidence with it because you've actually demonstrated you're capable by doing the thing. So it's very much a personal journey. So many people, they're looking for a leadership development training and this and that, whatever, to make them more confident. That's not going to help anything if you're not identifying why the person feels that they're not confident and giving them something specifically to bridge that gap.
And that's where, the rediscovering or the root cause, which you said earlier as well, identifying those root cause will come up. So you talked about women in leadership, and you yourself has been into this. And you had been into senior leadership roles. You had been now leading a lot of your own organization. But this question is definitely applies a lot of to women leader, but also to people like us, right? So many professional leaders carry responsibility, and nobody else sees that. Like we talked about family, career, health, relationship, financial pressure. There are multiple questions in my mind, right? And one of the things I have seen that, today it is being rarely talked about in leadership discussion, those invisible emotional labor which people carrying along with them. So from your point of view, how much overwhelm comes from the work itself versus everything people carrying silently along with them?
So much it all plays together. I think the biggest shift needs to be in thinking of us as being a work version of us and a professional version of us, and then our home version, separating work and life. We live in a world now where they are not separate, right? Back in the 50s, when we had two parent households where one person was out working and the other person was staying at home, then it was very easy to divide, work versus home. We don't live in that world anymore. So first things first is identifying I am a whole leader. I am not just a leader at work. I am not just a leader at home. I am a leader because it is who I am. And from there too, having this recognition, and this is more of a, talking about systems, like systemic issues in terms of overwhelm with organizations and just even globally, is our systems are designed now still to accommodate the version of families and households from 50, 60, 70 years ago. None of the systems have changed right now. And that's why we're all experiencing what you're describing. And I would say it's definitely a huge factor for women leaders. I myself discussed it. I share it in my book that you're carrying the emotional labor, not just of yourself and your team, but you're also carrying your partner a lot of times and your children and everybody else, sometimes elderly relatives, all falls on you. But now it has nothing to do with gender, because both men and women equally are experiencing the same exact thing, because the division of labor in the homes has equalized, quite a bit, or it's moving in that direction. I wouldn't say it's definitely 50-50 yet, but we're definitely progressing versus where we were 10 years ago. And until workplaces design systems to help people understand this, to actually accommodate the fact that there isn't a work versus a home, that it's all one, everybody's going to stay overwhelmed in the state that they're at. And at this point too, and I know I've had a few comments, in terms of my book, that my book talks so much about, systemic issues with overwhelm, but I give personal solutions. And at this point, we have no other choice, because if we don't take the personal solutions to be able to increase our capacity a little bit, we don't have an opportunity to get more people into leadership that can actually change the systems. So it requires us functioning at this razor thin margin of, capacity at this moment to be able to get into positions to be able to change things on a structural level.
True.
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
So one thing came in my mind when you're talking about oneness, which reminded me one of the important verse in Bhagavad Gita is Krishna explained Arjun that you should see yourself into others and others into yourself. And that's how the oneness will come. As a leader, as a family member, we don't understand that what that person is going through and what I will be doing if I have to do his role, not as an professional role, but as an individual role, because as a profession, he might look like a senior vice president, but he is carrying multiple roles along with him. And seeing others into yourself, right? So what you would do if you had to go through such situation?
Sure.
Right?
I coach folks through this all the time. Sorry, not to cut you off on that, because it's a consistent issue when it comes, especially with folks in leadership they have concerns about like conflict resolution. They immediately get like so upset and triggered over something that happened from a direct report or a colleague. And instead, they react to it instead of approaching it from a place of curiosity, because you don't know why they missed the deadline. It doesn't mean that they're out to get you. They might have a valid reason why they missed the deadline. But until you put yourself in their shoes, you're never going to know. And the number one way that I recommend people work through this is through taking things from a place of curiosity, right? Because you have no expectations, but you're curious about what happened. And that creates a very open communication loop that people don't get defensive, that they feel like they failed, that they're able to share with you why, something happened, and you can work through solutions like that.
Seeing yourself into others and others into yourself, that makes the oneness.
Yep.
I only learned that step into others' shoes. But oneness comes when you also see that what they will do, that person will do when he comes to your place. Then the oneness will come up. Now, moving forward and before we sign off, in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna ultimately helped Arjuna to stop looking backward and step into a next chapter of his war. Now, that war was not being seen as a literary war. The war was within his mind, within himself. And when he stepped into that war of Kurukshetra, it has become a war between a warrior and an enemy, not Arjuna and his family. So all the baggages he could remove, and he moved into a next chapter. And that's what you also talk a lot about it. And a phrase I noticed repeatedly in your work, that you help people to lead their next chapter. What do you think which is preventing people from stepping into the next chapter, even when they know deeply down it's time to move it? And I also want to understand what is your next journey, your next chapter.
Sure. So, the way I usually work folks through this is, number one, and a lot of times too, if you're like overwhelmed and stuck, you are stuck in the present, right? You're not thinking about the future. You're not thinking about the past. You're thinking about, oh my God, I have so much I got to do. I am completely like mentally locked up here and I don't know where to go. And the way that you solve this problem is not by ignoring your past or being blind to the future. It's by actually using both as data. So most of the time when I'm working, whether it be through coaching and advisory clients, or even when I'm working with audiences, through keynotes and workshops, we're looking at, okay, well, what led you to where you are today, right? What went well? What didn't go well? What am I looking to do differently next time? We're doing a full analysis of everything that's happened that's led us up to this point to then identify, okay, well, where do we want to be? Right. So where are we today? Where do we want to be? So that's very much looking at, like, I call it 5-year vision. We do a 5-year vision exercise and we kind of visualize and actually set goals and, make them measurable and actionable. From there, and only from there, can you identify what's standing in the way. between the two of these. And that's where your strategy actually catches up and says, okay, well, what's standing in the way is I'm not confident, or I don't have the right team, or I need money, or whatever else. Because then you can actually create a game plan to get from here to there. But you can't get from here to there without analyzing what got you here first. Because in analyzing what got you here, that's going to give you everything you already need to know in terms of what worked, what didn't work, what was easy, what was hard. Because then you double down on what worked great, and then you get to where you want to go even faster, right? So it's very much like a full, full picture, analysis, but that's ultimately how I walk people through that. And then to answer your question on what's next for me, so very recently, I just had my big milestone. After years of having people ask me about my Overwhelm Culprits, I did keynotes and workshops for years, and during Q&As, people would ask me, do you have a book I could take home? So the book finally came out, and that came out last month. But now the next stage of that, I believe for me, will be shifting more from, in terms of, I speak a lot about personal leadership, self-leadership, and then being able to help develop other leaders, taking that and now taking it to how do we use these same systems to help structurally with teams and organizations, right? How do we scale it to that? So that's going to be a lot of where you see my work heading next.
Excellent. Excellent. So, Corrie, thanks a lot. And whatever you are doing, your work you are building around helping people and leaders around that. With the constant change happening around us, AI is coming in, economy is becoming uncertain now. There's an information overload. So this practice is what you have explained today will definitely help leaders to stay grounded enough to make good decisions when there is uncertainty. And it's simple. You explain in a very simplistic way. Bhagavad Gita was written to simplify Vedas and Upanishad 5,000 years back. But today, it is very difficult to bring into practical life. The metaphor which we have used are very simple, very easy to understand. But how do you apply? And that's for people like you help leaders and people around the world to learn how simply you can bring into structured way. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for joining us today on Beyond the Battlefield.
Thanks for having me.
What stayed with me from today's conversation is a very simple idea. Overwhelm is not always a sign that life is asking too much from us. Sometimes it's a sign that an old version of us can no longer carry where life is trying to take us. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna never rushes to fix Arjuna's confusion. He doesn't offer a shortcut. He doesn't remove the battlefield. Instead, he helps Arjuna see himself more clearly. And perhaps that is the invitation for all of us. When we feel overwhelmed, instead of immediately asking, how do I escape this? Maybe we begin by asking, what is this moment trying to teach me? Today, Corrie reminded us that clarity matters more than speed, that confidence is built from the inside out, that growth often requires us to let go of identities that no longer serve us, and that the next chapter of our life rarely begins when circumstances change. It begins when we change. Thank you for joining us on Beyond the Battlefield. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone who may need it today. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave us a review. It helps more people discover these timeless conversations on leadership, growth, and inner clarity. And if you'd like to connect with us, write to us at beyondthebattlefield@outlook.in. Until next time, take care of the battlefield within. Namaste.